We need these funds released today.
I understand the urgency, but the legalities are complex.
The law is clear on this property. You have no right to hold it.
The morning light came slow over Clarksdale, the way it always did in October. The kind of light that made the Mississippi Delta look like a painting somebody had started and never finished. Marcus Webb pulled open the front door of Ground Zero Blues Club at 10:47 in the morning, 3 hours before the kitchen opened, knowing he was not supposed to be there. He had not slept. The eviction notice in his back pocket had 3 creases and 1 coffee stain. The notice gave his mother 47 days to vacate the building she had run since 1978. 47 days to dismantle Webb's General Store, the corner shop that had outlasted 2 hurricanes, 1 tornado, and the slow-bleeding death of every other small business on Delta Avenue. Marcus Webb was 22 years old. He had worked behind that counter for the last 6. He had been raised on the smell of pickle barrels and cane sugar and the particular silence of a town that no longer knew how to fight. And this morning, with no other door left to knock on, he had come to the one door his mother had specifically told him not to bother. The inside of Ground Zero smelled like floor polish and bourbon and old wood. The chairs were stacked on the tables, legs up, the way a club rests in the few hours it gets to itself. A single woman in a faded apron was sweeping near the stage, where a battered upright piano sat with its lid open like a tired animal. She looked up when he came in, didn't startle, didn't ask his business. She just nodded once and went on sweeping. "Ma'am," Marcus said, "I need to speak to whoever owns this place." The woman paused. She had silver hair pulled back in a low knot. She might have been 60, she might have been 70. Her name, though Marcus did not yet know it, was Ruth Whitfield, and she had worked at Ground Zero for 19 years. "Whoever owns this place," Ruth said carefully, "is having his coffee." She pointed without turning her head toward the back corner of the room, where Marcus had not noticed anyone sitting. The far booth, the one tucked beside the storage room door, the one most patrons never used because of the bad sightlines to the stage. A man sat there, alone, a white porcelain cup in front of him half full. He had on a dark denim shirt with the sleeves rolled to the forearms, plain khaki pants, and a small soft cap of the kind that fishermen wore around Tallahatchie County. His hair was white, his beard was white and trimmed close. A small gold earring caught the slow light from the front window. He was looking at Marcus the way a man looks at the weather. Marcus did not know who he was, not yet. He saw an old man in a workman's clothes, the kind of old man you might find on any porch in Coahoma County on any given Saturday afternoon. He felt a small embarrassment that he had not seen him sooner. "Sir," Marcus said, "I'm sorry, I was looking for the owner." The old man set his cup down very carefully, the way a person sets down something he intends to come back to. He did not stand. He did not gesture to the seat across from him. He simply looked at Marcus with eyes that were very still and very dark, and after a long moment he said, in a voice that Marcus felt before he understood it, "Sit down, son, tell me what's wrong." This man was Morgan Freeman. To understand what happened that morning, you have to understand what Delta Avenue was before Derek Calloway flew in from Atlanta with a leather portfolio and a plan. Delta Avenue was not pretty. It was 4 blocks long, 2-story brick buildings, most of them, painted in colors that the sun had been working on since before the moon landing. There was Webb's General Store on the corner, founded by Marcus's grandfather in 1948. There was Maple's Barber Shop 2 doors down, where the men of Clarksdale had been getting fades and shaves for 61 years. There was Hattie's Sewing Repair, the Eastman Brothers Print Shop, the Bayou Cafe, a feed store that had become an antique store, and then a feed store again, and at the far end with its modest gravel lot and its hand-painted sign, Ground Zero Blues Club. For 40 years the block had survived because it had to. Nobody was getting rich there. Nobody was leaving either. Walter Webb, Marcus's father, had run Webb's General until his heart gave out 3 years ago in the produce aisle, with a crate of yams in his hands. Marcus's mother, Patricia, had kept it open since. 6 days a week, 12 hours a day. The town had assumed she always would. Then last March a letter arrived. The letter was on cream-colored stationery from a firm called Callaway Frontier Development, headquartered in Atlanta. It informed Patricia Webb that her building had been included in a redevelopment opportunity package that would, after final approvals, transform the entire 600 block of Delta Avenue into a mixed-use boutique hospitality complex called the Delta Reserve. The letter offered her $72,000 for a building appraised at $181,000. It used the word generous twice. Patricia did not respond. 6 more letters came. Then a man in a navy suit and silver cufflinks who introduced himself as Derek Calloway and explained, in the patient voice of a man explaining gravity to a child, that the offer would not get better, it would only expire. Patricia still did not respond. In June, the lease on the building's parking easement, was challenged in court by a holding company nobody had heard of. By August, the property tax assessment on Webb's General had been quietly raised by 41%, citing improvements to surrounding commercial value. In September, the city revoked the store's sidewalk display permit on a technicality nobody could quite locate in the books. And in October, 8 days before Marcus walked into Ground Zero, the eviction notice had arrived, a sheriff's deputy standing on the porch with his hat in his hand, apologizing as he served it. Marcus had taken the notice to the mayor's office. The mayor's assistant had taken his name. He had taken it to the Coahoma County Legal Aid Clinic, which had a 6-month waiting list. He had taken it to the Clarksdale Press, where a reporter named Ellis Garrett had written down everything Marcus said and then never published a word. Ellis, it turned out, was 3 months behind on his mortgage, and Callaway Frontier owned the bank. There was nowhere left to take it. So at 10:47 on a Tuesday morning in October, Marcus Webb walked into Ground Zero Blues Club, because Ground Zero was the only building on Delta Avenue that did not have a Callaway Frontier offer letter taped to the inside of its window, and Marcus wanted to know why. Now you might think you know where this story is going. You don't. Stay with me, because what happens in the next 18 minutes is going to surprise you. And what happens 6 weeks after that is going to surprise you more. Morgan listened. Marcus told him everything. The 37 offers his mother had refused. The tax hike, the sidewalk permit, the reporter who would not write, the 47 days he did not cry. He had cried himself out somewhere around the 3rd week. What he had left was a kind of dry, narrow anger that he was trying very hard to keep out of his voice, because his mother had raised him to be polite to old men. Morgan did not interrupt him, not once. He let his coffee go cold. He did not write anything down. He did not glance at his watch, which, as a matter of fact, he was not wearing. When Marcus finally ran out of words, the silence that followed was so complete that Marcus could hear the soft creak of the ceiling fan 3 rooms away, and the brush of Ruth's broom against the foot of the stage, and the slow tick of the old wall clock above the bar. "How old is your mama, son?" Morgan asked. The question was not what Marcus expected. 63. "And the store, you said your granddaddy started it." "Yes, sir, in 1948, right after he came back from the war." Morgan turned the coffee cup a quarter turn on its saucer. "I knew a Walter Webb who used to deliver milk in this town back in the 50s. Drove a white truck with a bad muffler." "Would that have been your granddaddy?" Marcus stared at him. "Yes, sir. He'd let me ride along sometimes when I was a boy in Charleston. My mama worked Saturdays and Walter would swing by and pick me up so I'd have something to do. He gave me a Coca-Cola the first time I rode that truck. Said a boy ought to know what a free thing tastes like, so he can recognize it later when it shows up." Morgan smiled, very small, very far away. "I haven't thought about that man in 50 years. The front door of Ground Zero opened. 3 men walked in. The first was tall, broad through the shoulders, dressed in a navy suit that looked too warm for Mississippi in October. He had a leather portfolio under one arm and the careful, scanning eyes of a man who had walked into a great many rooms in his life and never once been told he didn't belong. Behind him came a smaller man in a gray suit with a tablet, and a third man with a folded set of architectural plans. The tall man stopped in the middle of the floor. He looked at the stacked chairs. He looked at Ruth with her broom. He looked at Marcus in the back booth. He looked at the old man in the denim shirt sitting across from Marcus. He did not look at any of them the way you look at a person. "We're closed," Ruth said. "My name is Derek Callaway. I have a 10:45 with the principal stakeholder of this property. I assume he's running late." Derek looked at his phone. "Has he arrived?" Ruth stopped sweeping. "The principal stakeholder," Derek said again, slower this time, the way a man speaks when he believes he is being misunderstood, "of Ground Zero Blues Club. I sent a letter to the management group 3 weeks ago. We're acquiring the surrounding block for a development project. He agreed to meet." Ruth looked at Morgan. Morgan was looking at Derek Callaway. He had not changed his posture. His hands were still folded around the empty coffee cup. His face had not moved. But something in the room had shifted, the way a room shifts when a single window is opened in a house that has been closed all summer. "You sent a letter," Morgan said quietly, "to the management group." Derek glanced at him. The glance was brief, dismissive, the kind of glance you give a piece of furniture that is not where you expected it to be. "That's right, sir. I'm going to need this booth in a few minutes for my meeting. There's a coffee shop 2 blocks over if you need somewhere to settle." He turned back to Ruth. "Ma'am, can you call your manager and find out where the principal is? I have a flight at 3. Ruth opened her mouth. Morgan raised one finger, half an inch off the rim of his coffee cup, just enough. Ruth closed her mouth. "I'm not in a hurry, friend," Morgan said. "I'll move when I move." Derek's jaw set. "This is the part where I want you to pay attention. Because Derek Calloway, in the next 60 seconds, is going to make the mistake that ends his career. He's going to make it not because he's stupid, he isn't, but because he has spent 23 years being right about the small things in a way that has convinced him he is right about the large things, and he no longer knows how to tell the difference. Sir, Derek's voice changed. It became polite the way a knife becomes polite when somebody puts a leather sheath on it. I'm not asking, this is a business meeting. The owners of this establishment are expecting me. I'd appreciate it if you would respect that. The owners of this establishment, Morgan said, are expecting you. That's what I said. Morgan nodded slowly. He looked at Marcus. Marcus had gone very still in the booth, the way a small animal goes still when something larger has walked into the clearing. Son, Morgan said gently, would you mind sliding out for a moment? Let this gentleman have his seat. It's all right, just for a minute. Marcus slid out of the booth. He stood awkwardly in the aisle. Derek did not sit. Derek did not even look at the booth. Derek was looking at Morgan with the kind of slow attention a man gives to a man who is not behaving correctly. What's your name? Derek said. My name's been my name a long time, Morgan said. I imagine you'll learn it before we're done. The smaller man with the tablet, his name for the record was Brent Halloran, and he was Callaway Frontier's senior counsel, made a small sound, a throat-clearing sound. It is the sound a lawyer makes when he is about to advise his boss to stop talking, and his boss is about to ignore him. All right, Derek smiled. The smile did not reach his eyes. All right, sir, let me explain something to you. Because I get the sense you don't quite understand what's happening this morning. I have a meeting with the legal entity that holds title to this property. That entity is represented by an Atlanta firm. I have in this folder a draft purchase agreement for $1.4 million. I have spent 6 months on this project. I have a board waiting on a phone call at noon. So with all due respect, whoever you are, this is not the conversation you want to be in the middle of. You understand? I understand, Morgan said. Good. Then please. I understand, Morgan said again. What you're telling me. He did not move. Derek's smile thinned. He turned to Ruth. Ma'am, please. Ruth was looking at the floor. Her broom had stopped moving entirely. Mr. Calloway, she said, I think you should sit down with the gentleman. I'm trying to. No, sir, I mean, you should sit down with the gentleman. She said it the way you say something to a child who is about to walk into traffic. Derek heard the tone. He did not understand it. He looked from Ruth to Morgan to Marcus, and his face did a thing that faces do when they are looking for a piece of information that they have not yet been given. What is going on here? He said. The room held its breath. If you have ever stood in a Mississippi Delta room in October, you know the kind of silence I mean, not empty, heavy. The silence of a room that knows something nobody has said yet. The ceiling fan turned slowly. A single mote of dust crossed the bar of light from the front window and disappeared into shadow. Outside, a dog barked once on Delta Avenue and stopped. Mr. Calloway, Ruth said very gently, the way you'd point out a snake in a yard. You're talking to Morgan Freeman. Derek did not move. He kept his face arranged the way it had been arranged. He did not blink. The smaller man with the tablet, Brent Halloran, took one small step backward, as if the floor under his feet had cooled. The third man with the architectural plans was already lowering them to his side. I'm sorry, Derek said. You're talking to Mr. Morgan Freeman, the actor. Ruth hesitated, and he is the principal stakeholder you came here to meet. Derek's eyes did not move from Ruth's face for a long second. Then they slid slowly to Morgan. Morgan watched him the way a man watches a river he has watched all his life. Mr. Freeman. Derek's voice tried to find a new register and almost found it. Forgive me, I didn't recognize you. The lighting in here is. The lighting in here is fine, Morgan said. He reached into the breast pocket of the denim shirt. He took out a thin leather wallet, worn soft, and from the wallet he took a single business card. He laid it on the table, white side up, and slid it across with 2 fingers until it sat at the edge of the booth, where Derek could read it. The card said in plain black type, Morgan Freeman Co-owner, Ground Zero Blues Club, 0 Delta Avenue, Clarksdale, Mississippi, and underneath, in smaller letters, Trustee Talashai River Frontation. Derek read the card. He read it twice. Brent Halloran, the lawyer, said in a very quiet voice, Derek. Derek did not look at him. He was looking at the second line on the card. He was looking at it the way a man looks at a footprint in the snow when he has been told for 6 months that there is no one else in the woods. Mr. Calloway, Morgan said, sit down. Derek sat down. He sat across from Morgan in the booth Marcus had vacated. Brent stood at the end of the table, the tablet limp in his hand. The man with the plans drifted toward the bar as if proximity to the conversation might infect him. Marcus stood 3 feet away, frozen in the aisle, Not knowing whether he was supposed to leave or stay or run, Ruth was sweeping again, very slowly, very quietly. The way you sweep when you do not want anyone to remember you are in the room. Tallahatchie River Foundation, Morgan said. You know what that is, Mr. Calloway? Do your homework before you come, son. That's the easy part of this work. Mr. Freeman, with respect, my firm has done extensive title searches on every property on every property except this one, and the 4 that the foundation holds in trust on either side of it. Morgan tapped the table once with a tattooed knuckle that wasn't tattooed at all, just sun-darkened and old. Hattie's Sewing Repair, the Eastman Print Shop, the Bayou Cafe Maples Barber Shop. The foundation holds the land. The proprietors hold the businesses. That arrangement has been on file at the Coahoma County Courthouse since 2003. Brent Halloran's eyes closed for a moment. That can't be right, Derek said. The title records show. The title records show what the title records show. The lease structure is a separate filing, filed in the same building, on the same floor, 2 doors down from the deed office. It's not hidden, Mr. Calloway. It just wasn't where you looked. Derek put both hands flat on the table. This is a problem, he said. Yes, Morgan said, it is. I want to stop here for just a moment, because I want you to understand what Derek Calloway is feeling right now and what he is about to do with it. Derek is not a stupid man. He is a smart man who has been right his whole life about the kind of things that smart men are usually right about. He went to a good business school. He read the books. He worked the hours. He had been told by every system he had ever moved through that the world rewarded people who saw clearly and acted quickly, and he had come to believe that the people who lost their land to people like him deserved to lose it because they had not seen clearly and they had not acted quickly. He thought of himself on his best days as a person who delivered modernity to places that had been waiting for it. On his worst days he did not think about it at all. What he was feeling right now, sitting across from Morgan Freeman in the back booth of Ground Zero Blues Club, was not shame. It was inconvenience. All right. Derek squared his shoulders. He produced the smile again. All right, Mr. Freeman, clearly there's been a miscommunication. I'd like to put a pause on this conversation, regroup with my counsel, and come back to you with a proper proposal that takes the foundation's interests into account. Maybe we can work something out where the foundation comes in as a partner on the development. We have models for that. Equity stakes. Naming rights. There's room here. Morgan did not answer right away. He picked up the white porcelain cup. He looked into it. The coffee was cold. He set it down again. Mr. Calloway, he said, how long have you been doing this work? 23 years. 23 years. And in 23 years, has anyone ever sat across from you and said no and meant it? Derek almost smiled. He thought it was a setup for him to demonstrate his negotiating savvy. Not for long, he said. That's what I thought. Morgan turned his head slightly. He looked at Marcus, still standing in the aisle. He looked at Ruth. He looked at the front window. At the slow square of Delta Avenue, you could see through it, the corner of Maples Barber Shop just visible at the edge of the frame. Mr. Calloway, let me tell you a story. You don't have to like it. You just have to hear it. You can leave when I'm done. Derek did not leave. My mama grew up 2 miles from where we're sitting, Morgan said. She was born in 1907. She walked to school past a sycamore tree on a piece of land that, in 1922, a white developer from Memphis decided was going to be a cotton processing plant. He had drawings. He had a board waiting on a phone call. He had a lawyer who had not done his homework. There were 9 families living on that land, working that land, paying for that land in installments to a man who had since died and whose son had decided the installments did not count. By the end of that summer, those 9 families were gone, and the cotton plant was up, and it ran for 6 years, and it failed, and the land was sold, and the sycamore tree was cut down for firewood by a man who did not know it had ever meant anything to anybody. He paused. Now, you're going to tell me that was a long time ago. You're going to tell me times have changed. You're going to tell me we have laws now, and your firm follows them, and the comparison is not fair. Morgan smiled very slightly. And you'd be right about the laws. You'd be wrong about everything else. Because the thing about that developer from Memphis is, he didn't think he was doing anything wrong either. He thought he was bringing a cotton plant to a sleepy little delta town. He thought he was the future. And the families that lived on that land, they were just slow. They were just in the way. Mr. Freeman, I'm not finished, son. Derek shut his mouth. The Webbs, Morgan said, have been on the corner of Delta and 3rd since 1948. Patricia Webb walks to that store every morning at 5:30 and unlocks the back door and turns on the coffee. Her boy, sitting right there, has been waking up with her since he was tall enough to reach the second shelf. You sent her 37 letters, you raised her taxes. You revoked her sidewalk permit. You bought the bank that holds the only reporter in this county who would have written about her. And then, when she still did not break, you sent the sheriff to her door with a piece of paper that gave her 47 days to walk away from 61 years of her family's life. Morgan let that sit. And you call it a development project. Derek did not move. I'll tell you what it is, Mr. Calloway. It is the same thing it has always been. It is a man with a lawyer and a plan and a flight, at 3 deciding that a place is not finished until he has finished it. And the people who live in that place are not real to him until they get in his way. And the moment they get in his way, they become a problem he has the right to solve. That is what you are doing. That is what you have been doing for 23 years. I am not going to tell you to feel bad about it. I have lived too long to think that telling a man to feel bad about something ever moved a single inch of ground. But I am going to tell you this, you are not going to do it on this block, not while I am standing on it. For a long moment nobody spoke. Brent Halloran was looking at the floor. Then Derek did something none of them expected. He laughed. It was a short, dry laugh with no joy in it. Mr. Freeman, he said, I respect what you're saying, I do. But you and I both know that this project is happening. The financing is in place. The city has given preliminary approval. The board has signed off. I came here today as a courtesy, frankly. Now we have a complication, and I will deal with the complication. But I am not going to be talked out of a $1.4 million deal by a parable about a sycamore tree. I'm going to make some phone calls, he said. Then I'm coming back and you and I are going to sit down like grown men and find a number that works. Because that is how this gets done. That is how it has always gotten done. With all respect, sir, you've made movies about this kind of thing. I do this kind of thing for a living. Morgan did not stand. He looked at Derek the way Walter Webb had once looked at a bad muffler. All right, son, he said. You go make your phone calls. Derek walked out. Brent Halloran lingered for a second. He opened his mouth. He closed it. He set a business card on the table, his own card, and quietly said, Mr. Freeman, I am going to advise my client to take a different approach. I want that on the record. Then he followed Derek out the door. The man with the architectural plans had already left. The bell over the door stopped ringing. Ruth was standing very still in the middle of the floor, her broom forgotten in her hands. Marcus had not moved from the aisle. He was looking at Morgan, and his face had the open, unguarded look of a person who had just watched something he did not know was possible. Ruth, Morgan said, pour the boy a coffee. Yes, sir. And tell Lila at the foundation office I need her at the courthouse this afternoon. Tell her to bring the original 2003 filings and the supplementary easement registry. Tell her she is going to spend the rest of this week with the developers' council, and she is going to enjoy it. Yes, sir. Morgan turned to Marcus. Son, sit down. Marcus sat. You did a hard thing this morning, Morgan said. Coming in here, asking. You don't know it yet, but the hardest part of fixing a wrong is the part where you say it out loud to a stranger. You did that. Your mama would be proud. Marcus did not trust his voice. He nodded. Now, I need you to listen carefully, because what's about to happen is going to feel slow. Lawyers are slow. Courts are slow. Mississippi is slow. You're going to wake up some morning next week and think nothing's moving and we've lost. We have not lost. We are just moving the way it has to be moved. You understand? Yes, sir. Good. Morgan reached across the table and put a hand briefly on Marcus's forearm. Go home. Tell your mama I knew your granddaddy. Tell her the milk truck had a bad muffler. She'll know what to do with that. The door swung shut behind him. Morgan sat in the booth alone for a long time. Ruth swept very quietly. The ceiling fan turned. The single mote of dust came back. Or maybe it was a different one, and crossed the bar of light from the front window and disappeared. Now this is the part of the story where you might expect me to tell you that Derek Calloway came back the next morning, hat in hand, transformed. He did not. Derek Calloway did not transform. Not that week, not that month. He doubled down, the way men like Derek almost always double down. Because the alternative, admitting he had been wrong about not just this morning but about the shape of his whole working life, was a door he was not willing to walk through. He flew back to Atlanta that afternoon. He sat in his conference room and instructed Brent Halloran to find a way around the Tallahatchie River Foundation's leases. Brent, who had spent the flight home reviewing the 2003 filings on his tablet and quietly deciding that he wanted to be on a different side of his life, took notes and nodded, and then, the following Monday, submitted his resignation. 3 other associates resigned with him. Derek did not pause. He hired new counsel from a larger firm in Charlotte. He instructed them to challenge the foundation standing on the grounds that its 2003 filings had been improperly recorded. The Charlotte firm, after a week of paid research, came back with a 40-page memo recommending the same thing Brent had recommended: walk away. Derek fired the Charlotte firm. He hired a third firm, a boutique outfit out of Houston that specialized in what its own marketing materials called Frontier Transactions. The Houston firm filed a public records request in Coahoma County that by the end of the second week of November had been answered with photocopies of every document on Delta Avenue going back to 1971. The Houston firm read those documents and, after some delay, also recommended that Derek walk away. By this point, the story had begun to leak. The first call came from a reporter at the Memphis Commercial Appeal, who had heard from a friend in Clarksdale that Morgan Freeman had personally stopped a major development in his hometown. The Commercial Appeal ran a small piece on November 18. The Mississippi Today picked it up 2 days later. By December, the AP Wire had it, and by mid-December the story was in 3 national papers, with a recurring detail that Derek Calloway found especially difficult. Every article quoted Patricia Webb, the 63-year-old widow who ran Webb's General Store, and every article noted that she had refused 37 offers from Calloway Frontier Development before the developer had escalated to legal pressure. The framing was not flattering. In Atlanta, Derek's investors began to ask questions. 2 of the firm's largest LPs, a pension fund out of Ohio and a family office in Connecticut, requested calls. Derek told them the situation was contained. The calls did not stop. By January, the family office had quietly indicated it would not be participating in Callaway Frontier's next fund. By February, the pension fund had followed. The Delta Reserve Project, which had been Callaway Frontier's flagship for the coming year, was quietly shelved. By March, Derek's 2 senior partners had bought him out of the firm. He did not see it coming, which is the saddest part. He kept telling himself, all the way through January and February, that he was being right and the world was being slow. He told his wife. He told the few friends still answering his calls. He told the Mirror. He gave a long interview to a trade publication in which he described himself as a builder who had been blindsided by sentimentality. The interview ran. It did not help. Through all of this, Morgan Freeman did not give a single interview about the matter. He did not need to. What Morgan did instead was quieter and more useful. On November 4, the Tallahatchie River Foundation filed an extended-term protective lease on the Webb's General Store building, with a clause that locked the rent at its 1994 rate for the next 30 years. Patricia Webb signed it at her kitchen table on a Tuesday evening with Marcus and Ruth Whitfield as witnesses. She did not cry. She just put her hand flat on the document for a long moment after she signed it, the way a person rests a hand on a sleeping child. On December 1, the foundation announced a small grant program for the proprietors of the Delta Avenue block, $10,000 per business with no application required, for operating continuity. The grant was funded by an anonymous donor. Morgan never confirmed who the donor was, although Ruth Whitfield, who handled the foundation's small office across from the courthouse, smiled the kind of small smile that did not require confirmation. On January 14, Morgan invited Marcus Webb to lunch at Ground Zero. He told him, over a plate of catfish and grits, that the foundation was creating a junior trusteeship position. 2 years, stipend. The young trustee would learn how the foundation worked, how the land trusts were filed, how the courthouse moved. The position was not a job offer in any conventional sense. It was an apprenticeship. Marcus would still run the store with his mother, but he would also twice a week sit in a small office across from the Coahoma County Courthouse and learn the slow work of holding ground. Marcus said yes. He said yes the way a young man says yes when he has finally been offered a door he did not know was there. And then, in late March, 6 weeks after the Callaway Frontier dissolution had been quietly filed in the state of Georgia, Derek Callaway came back to Clarksdale. He was not wearing the Navy suit. He was wearing a gray jacket that did not fit him as well as the Navy one had. He had lost some weight. He had not lost the look in his eyes, not entirely, but it had softened around the edges in the way that a face softens when it has been spending time alone with itself. He walked into Ground Zero at 3 in the afternoon on a Thursday. The club was not open yet. Ruth was at the bar with a clipboard. Morgan was at the back booth in the same denim shirt with a fresh cup of coffee. Derek stopped in the middle of the floor. He looked at Ruth. He looked at Morgan. He did not have a portfolio. He did not have a lawyer. He had a small white envelope in his hand. "Mr. Freeman," he said. "Mr. Callaway. I came to give this to Mrs. Webb. I went to the store first. She was not there. Her son said she was at the bank. I did not want to leave it on the counter." He set the envelope on the table. Morgan did not pick it up. "What's in the envelope, son?" "An apology, a handwritten one, 3 pages. It is not a request for anything. I am not asking her to forgive me. I am not asking her to read it. I just wanted it to exist." Morgan looked at the envelope. "Sit down." Derek sat. They sat together for a while in silence. Ruth set a coffee in front of Derek and went back to her clipboard. Outside on Delta Avenue, a truck rattled past. A woman called to a child. The ceiling fan turned. "What are you doing now, Mr. Calloway?" "That's a good answer. I have some money left, not much. The buyout was less than I expected. My wife is still with me. That surprised me. I thought she would leave. She didn't." "Why didn't she?" "She said she was waiting to see who I was on the other side of this." Morgan nodded slowly. "That's a woman with patience." "Yes, sir." Morgan turned the coffee cup a quarter turn. He looked at Derek the way he had looked at him in October, with the same stillness. Then he said something that Derek, in the years that followed, would tell 3 different people he had not been prepared for. "There is a piece of land," Morgan said, "north of here by the river, 41 acres. The family that owned it for 90 years cannot keep it. They are not being run off by a developer. They are being run off by time, which is a slower developer but a more honest one. The foundation is going to take it into trust. We are going to need somebody to walk that land, talk to the family, learn what they want it to be. It does not pay well. It does not pay anything for the first year, in fact. You would have to find work to live on, but it would be useful. To them, and I suspect to you." Derek did not answer right away. "Why would you offer me that?" he said. "Because the alternative is that you go back to Atlanta and become a different kind of man than the one your wife is waiting for. And I have known too many men who became that man. I would rather lose a 41-acre conversation than another one of those. Mr. Freeman, take the week, think on it. The land will be there. If you say no, no harm done. If you say yes, you and I are going to have a number of slow conversations. I'm warning you, son, they will not be fast." Derek almost smiled. "I don't think fast is what I need right now." "No," Morgan said, "I don't think it is." Derek left. He did not come back the next day. He came back 9 days later. He said yes. And 6 weeks after that, on a warm Tuesday morning in the middle of May, you could have stood on the sidewalk in front of Webb's General Store on the corner of Delta and 3rd in Clarksdale, Mississippi, and watched a number of small things happen at once that, if you did not know the story, would have looked like nothing in particular. You would have seen Patricia Webb unlock her store at 5:30 in the morning, the way she had every morning for the last 48 years. You would have seen Marcus Webb cross the street at 9:15, with a folder under his arm, on his way to the small foundation office across from the courthouse. You would have seen Ruth Whitfield walk into Ground Zero at 10, carrying her clipboard. You would have seen Derek Calloway, in jeans and a plain shirt, climb out of a pickup truck and head north on Highway 49 toward a piece of land by the river. And in the back booth of Ground Zero Blues Club, you would have seen a man in a denim shirt with the sleeves rolled to the forearms, a small gold earring catching the light, sitting alone with a fresh cup of coffee, watching the Mississippi morning come on the way he had watched it come on for most of his life. He would not have looked like he had saved anything. That is the way it works down here. If this story stayed with you, leave a comment with the name of someone in your own life who taught you the difference between power and purpose. Like and subscribe for more stories about real character, quiet strength, and the slow work that keeps a community standing. Watch until the end the next time too. The conclusion is usually not what you expect. Disclaimer: this story is a work of fiction created with the assistance of AI for the purpose of sharing positive messages and life lessons. It is inspired by Morgan Freeman's well-known reputation for wisdom, his real love of the Mississippi Delta, his beekeeping passion, his pilot's license, and his commitment to his Southern community. The events, characters, other than Morgan Freeman himself, locations and dialogue depicted are entirely fictional and not intended to represent or target any real individual, business, or organization. Any resemblance to actual events or persons other than Morgan Freeman is purely coincidental. No AI voice cloning or deepfake technology has been used to impersonate Morgan Freeman.